want some sauce?
Scene 1, Apple, take 1.
What's up, everybody? How you doing out there? In this video we're going to be doing something that's interesting, and that is we are going to be recycling soap. Yeah, we're going to recycle soap. The thing is I think we've all used soap and it gets into small pieces like this, and then when you're in the shower it just keeps slipping out of your hand, and so there's really no point in you know, continuing trying to use it. A lot of times this stuff will break in half and they'll just get on the floor or whatever, and you're just like, okay, well, it's time to get a new bar of soap. And after I rinse them off, I put them in a little box and I just let them dry out. Now, one of the things that you're going to need is a double boiler. Okay, now you can get these pretty much anywhere. You can get them at Walmart, whatever. This is a stainless steel one, and the object is basically this. You have a pot full of hot water, you put this in, and there you go. This is where the soap's going to go. Now, soap will melt because one of the main ingredients of soap is fat, okay? And fat, we know, ends up breaking down when heat is exposed to it. But this has gone through a process called saponification, okay? And this is after they have added lye to it, okay? It ends up basically creating soap. And of course they add things like fragrances and other things inside there to create bubbles as well as smell and whatnot. You might find some that actually end up having small particulates in there, like an exfoliant or whatever. If you want to, you can add more of those a little bit later on. But even with all that stuff, it'll still melt, but it has to be controlled melt, okay? So one of the easiest ways to make sure that we have a controlled melt is to take a grater and to grate our soap. Okay, now this is hardened soap, and then so basically what we're going to end up getting is small pieces like that. Now some people might even ask the question, why in the world would you want to go ahead and recycle soap? It's so cheap. You're right, but at the same time, why let it go to waste? Okay, so that is all grated up. And then this, of course, when it gets washed, hey, the soap's going to help, right? We're going to put just maybe like a teaspoon of water inside the double boiler first, and then we're going to put this inside there. If you have an unscented soap, like let's say something that's almost like an ivory or something, you can put essential oils in this, right, in order to give it a new smell. If you want to give it where it's got some texture, so that way it can take off dead skin, what is that called, an exfoliant? Yeah, it's an exfoliant. A defoliant is like Agent Orange. Don't put Agent Orange in this, put an exfoliant. Let's go ahead and get this thing started over on the stove. Let me heat up some water. Now the pot that I'm going to use is a fairly large pot like this, and I'm going to put enough water inside there to create steam, but not enough where the water is touching the bottom of my double boiler. So you can see there's not a lot of water in here, and I'm going to get this up to temperature. And as soon as that starts to simmer a little bit, I'm going to take this guy and throw it over the top. It's going to act as a lid, and it'll help keep a lot of the moisture inside there. And you may be asking, well, what are you going to use as a mold? What I've done is I've taken, this is the bottom box of a box of Chex, and I just ended up putting in some saran wrap inside there. And when I say a box of Chex, I'm not talking about Chex Mix. I'm talking about, you know, you write out a check. If you want something that's going to look nice, you can get molds, or you can even make a mold out of some wood. And when it comes to stirring this, I'm going to be using one of my favorite tools in the entire world, and that is a plastic fork or a plastic spoon. You can use a chopstick. You can use really whatever you want. So you can see very little water. I'm not putting a lot in there at all. Okay, but it'll help a little bit, help dissolve this soap. Before it even gets hot, I'm going to throw the soap in. Now don't expect this to melt as fast as like a Hershey bar or something, okay? This is soap. It's going to be a little bit harder for this to melt, okay? But it will melt, and as soon as we start seeing it melt, we want to kind of give it some gentle stirs, and then this double boiler will actually get quite hot, so you have to kind of be careful. And as I mentioned before, you can add water to this, and it'll definitely become thinner, and it'll be easier to work with, but it'll take a little bit longer to cure. So I turned up the heat on this a little bit. So I added just a little bit of water, maybe like another teaspoon, and I jacked the heat up on this too. Now, if you want this to be thinner, you can add water. Okay. For me, I don't want this to take a long time to cure. So if you want to add any types of extracts to this, you can. If you want to add any dyes to this, if you want to add any essential oils, whatever. This would be the time that you'd want to go ahead and add like your exfoliants or whatever you're planning on using. Man, this looks just like mashed potatoes. So I'm going to call this good, and I'm going to take this over to my mold. Now, I'm going to scoop up my soap, throw it inside here. Ooh, smells like soap. Like a cheap soap. And then I need to, because there's not a lot of water in this, I need to kind of push this down. Fill up all those gaps. Now if there was more water in it, you could just pour it in there and call it good. I'm going to take a piece of saran wrap again. I'm going to place it over the top of this. And then I'm going to have another thing that I can actually end up pushing this down, filling in the gaps. Use a box of my wife's tea. Get some use out of this tea. Multi-purpose. I'm going to give it a few hours to cool off, and as soon as it's cool enough, I can remove the saran wrap and not worry about this kind of coming apart. Because there's a little moisture in it, it's going to take probably a few days for it to completely dry out. Okay, so what I'm doing right now is I have a piece of aluminum foil inside a cast iron skillet, and I have this over low heat. Okay, but I'm using this heat almost like a sanding block. Okay, so this should melt the soap. It should level everything out. And obviously I don't want to put this on high heat or nothing like that. It's pretty good. It's getting there. Okay, this is starting to get nice and melted, which is exactly what we're looking for. Kind of lift this up like that while I'm spinning it, and you'll see that it's flattened everything on one side. I'm going to move this to a different area, and I'm going to grab the other piece of soap. This is the top part where I had dried, and I'm going to be doing the same thing with this one. And essentially I'm just trying to sand this. I'm just trying to make things look a little even, as well as feel a little even, so when I'm spinning it around in my hand and I'm using it, I'm not breaking off chunks or anything along those lines. Something like that is good. We'll just kind of keep working this. I know, it's a lot of work just for a bar of soap, you know. But hey, if you got nothing better to do, I'm going to kind of spin this now around so that way it'll take any of the sharp edges off. Okay, I think at this point, this one's almost done. Okay, this one is starting to look pretty good too. But there's no reason to go overboard. I mean, if you want this to look like a brand new bar of soap, you can just get soap molds, and then just make, when you're melting the soap pieces down, just put a little bit more water in them. Okay, but this right here I think is going to be fine. But there you go, guys, 2 bars of soap from scrap. And these two guys, I'm actually not going to use them for probably about 4 or 5 days, something like that, because I want to make sure that that moisture leaves and they start becoming hard again and everything kind of just melts into itself. Because right now it'll be a little too crumbly because I didn't use a lot of water when I was doing the double boiler. But you should be able to see that these guys right here, about the size of a normal bar of soap, we're good to go. Okay, might not be the prettiest thing in the world, but we have 2 bars of soap that can go into my shop. And as I mentioned before, you can add essential oils to this, you can add exfoliants to this, you can do anything that you want. It's your soap. At the end of the day, just go out and buy some, right? It's like, what are you going to spend, 60 cents? You know, the amount of natural gas and elbow grease that you use on this is going to end up being more than that. But it still is kind of fun, and it's always good to get the absolute most out of something, and being able to kind of recycle it is always a cool thing. But anyway, guys, that's that. If you like my video, make sure you click like, make sure you click subscribe, make sure you click that bell button, okay? And got a lot more videos. Until next time, talk to you later.